If we made a list of every skill that dungeon masters use when running a D&D game, we would be here for a while. It's a big job, and often DMs are responsible for everything from the logistics of hosting and scheduling, to being a convincing storyteller and improv actor, to understanding the math and mechanics of creating well-balanced combat encounters. But if I could pick one skill that I think has the biggest impact, not just on how fun sessions are, but also on the DM's fundamental understanding of how the game works, it would be action economy. I DM'd for several years before truly understanding action economy. I had heard the term and had a basic concept of what it meant, but I didn't really know how to apply it to my encounter building. But ever since I dug into the subject and learned more, my encounters have gotten better, encounter building has gotten easier, and I have way more confidence that the actual experience of combat will line up with how I've positioned it narratively. Not to be dramatic, but without a full understanding of action economy, I think it's impossible to truly master DMing. So let's start with the obvious. What is it? Simply put, action economy is about who can do what, when, and how often. In D&D 5e, each participant in combat, whether that's a player character, an NPC, or a monster, has a limited number of things they can do each round. Usually that's an action, a bonus action, movement, and a reaction. That's basic info, we all know that. When it gets complicated is when we start looking at how the distribution of those actions between the party and the DM affects the way that combat plays out. If you've ever had a monster get unexpectedly annihilated, or you unexpectedly annihilated your players, you probably need to learn about action economy. That's all very theoretical, so let's look at a few examples. Imagine you have a party of 5 players facing off against one powerful monster. Now, the players obviously outnumber the monster, but that's why you've picked a really powerful one. The challenge rating says it should be deadly for a party this size. You've set it up narratively so your players know this is going to be a big fight, but the moment you enter initiative, everything goes downhill. Even if that monster hits hard or has multiple attacks, once its turn is over, the players have a long stretch of uninterrupted time to unleash their abilities and attacks against it. Maybe the monster has a reaction to defend itself, but once it's used that, there's still 4 more turns of attacks to get through. Your monster only gets a few rounds of combat, if you're lucky. So much for a climactic boss battle. The monster was much stronger than the players, and yet they still defeated it easily. This is because the players have a higher action economy, with 5 turns to every one of the monsters. They get to make more attacks, which means more chances to hit, more ability to strategize and coordinate, and more cumulative damage. Let's try another example from this same theoretical fight. Let's say that both the players and the monster have the ability to incapacitate or stun a foe. If the monster does it, they eliminate one of the 5 attacks coming their way. But if the players do it, they get an entire round unopposed. You might be thinking, Ginny, I get it. I need more monsters so I get more actions. Allow me one more example to explain why it isn't quite that simple. Your party of 5 is now facing 5 monsters instead of 1. You've done your best to balance it so that the monsters are well matched to your party's abilities. A fair fight. But when combat begins, players start focusing their fire. Since these monsters are even weaker than the one in the previous example, they go down easily when ganged up on. Every time they kill one, your action economy goes down. You get 1 less turn. Now, you could focus fire on them too, but unlike when they do it, you're ganging up on a specific player. If you take out the wizard doesn't get to play anymore, and they probably didn't have much fun. So you don't do that. You let them pick off your monsters one by one, and by the time they've reached the final monster, combat has become a slog. They're obviously going to win, but the last guy hasn't even been touched yet, so everyone has to attack it, but nobody feels any threat. The tension is gone, but the combat stretches on. You see, it's not just about how dangerous the monsters are, or how many of them are on the battlefield. Monsters and player characters don't have the same skills and abilities, and even when they do, there are things that your players get to use against you that just aren't fun if used back at them. Plus, sometimes the narrative calls for a single big bad. So how does understanding action economy help us fix this? That's up next, right after this clever little sponsorship skit that I worked very hard on so that you don't want to skip it. Thanks for helping out. I know you're really good at this computer stuff. I just don't know how to organize my GM notes. I've written so much about my world, my NPCs, my quests, but it feels like I can never find what I'm looking for. Don't worry, I'm gonna hook you up. There's this site called World Anvil. It's on the dark web. You just typed worldanvil.com into Google Chrome. Isn't that just the regular web? World Anvil has everything you need to record and organize your world building, whether you're a writer, a game master, or even a criminal. Why would a criminal need a world building platform? I'm in. You just created a free account. I could have done that. Yeah, but could you use the tools on World Anvil to create wiki-style indexed articles, interactive maps, family trees and timelines, stat blocks and character sheets? Yes? Those are some of the website's features. Looks like anyone can use them. Well, some features are only available to paid accounts. Good thing you're friends with Elite Hacker who can get you 40% off any annual membership. I've got one word for you. Ginny. Is that some kind of virus or something? No, it's just a discount code. Okay, you should go. Okay, let's talk about how to skew the action economy in your favor. Say your party has been sent to steal from the lush mountaintop garden of a cloud giant. This is a stealth mission, and you make sure they have plenty of warning that they don't want to go head to head with this huge spellcaster. But they make some bad rolls, or some bad choices, or both, and you all end up rolling initiative. The giant is powerful, dealing 30 to 40 damage per turn, but your players surround him, impose disadvantage, and between their magic items and shield spells and buffs, multiple rounds pass without the giant landing a single hit. Even though everything went wrong for them, the encounter ends up being a walk in the park, and they escape without a scratch. The credibility of your threat as a DM is totally gone. Next time they face a similar problem, why should they bother trying to be stealthy? They might as well knock on the front door if this is all that's waiting for them. Now, let's rewind that encounter and add in 2 wyverns, sentries to patrol the garden. Not only does the party have to deal with the heavy-hitting cloud giant, but now they're also facing aerial attacks. Maybe the wyverns grapple the characters and move them around the battlefield. Not only do the wyverns and the giant present different threats, complicating the battle and demanding a more tactical response from the players, but the increased action economy that comes with having 3 monsters instead of 1 makes each monster less of an easy target. Best of all, if the players kill the giant first, the wyverns can just take off. They were basically guard dogs, and with their master down, there's no reason for them to stay and fight. That means no endgame slog. I know I said earlier that just adding more monsters is not by itself a solution to the problem of action economy, but that doesn't mean it can't be an effective part of your strategy. Even if you want to highlight a single boss creature, they can still be backed up by minions. Not only does more monsters mean more turns, but it also allows you to bring varied abilities into play, preferably abilities that complement one another. But like I mentioned earlier, players can still focus their fire when they're facing multiple enemies, which brings me to my next point. This time, your party is fighting a band of orc raiders. These orcs have been harassing a nearby village, stealing supplies, and kidnapping civilians to use as leverage to stop the villagers from striking back or calling for help. Your players engage the raiders and choose their first target, but the raiders, experienced with fighting as a team, quickly recognize what's happening and respond. The orcs split up, some taking cover and lobbing ranged attacks, while their leader orders 2 others to go kill the captive villagers and a third to go fetch reinforcements. Now the players have to choose. Do they seek out the raiders who took cover to attack them? Do they attack the leader in hopes that the others will stop fighting? Do they try to rescue the captive villagers? Do they try to prevent reinforcements from coming? Might they even split the party? When players focus their fire, their real target is your action economy. Thankfully, there are a lot of ways you can discourage focused fire. Using your movement and taking advantage of cover, as well as abilities that make your monsters difficult or impossible to hit, such as invisibility or burrowing underground, can remove whatever creature they're ganging up on, forcing them to pick another target. And giving your monsters different objectives creates a sort of a trolley problem, where your players have to choose which target to prioritize, knowing that letting any one of them go unchallenged will have consequences. In real life, it isn't actually strategic to focus fire, because we are not bags of hit points that remain completely functional until the moment that we die. In real life, it's dangerous to turn your back on someone who's trying to kill you. While D&D 5e does not recreate this dynamic, you can mimic it by creating consequences for ignoring enemies. Maybe when left to their own devices, your monsters try to escape, or do damage to something or someone else, or activate dangerous effects that hinder or harm your party. I played in a recent session where, if left to their own devices for 2 full rounds, the monsters would literally multiply. And let me tell you, that was very effective at stopping us from focusing fire. Okay, we leave the imaginary orc raiders and find ourselves in an imaginary Underdark setting. Your party is fighting a mind flayer, maybe backed up by a few grimlocks, but still winning by a healthy margin. That is, until stalactites start falling from the ceiling. It's completely random, maybe a dice roll between every turn, and when they land, they not only deal bludgeoning damage to anyone in the space, but they create a permanent area of difficult terrain, changing the battlefield continuously throughout the combat. As if that wasn't enough, the area is also littered with traps. Players have to be careful as they move around, or they might risk falling into a hidden pit or triggering a snare, but not moving moving becomes harder and harder as the stalactites continue to fall. In 5th edition, it's usually players who get the advantage of action economy, but there are a few tools that you as the DM have access to that players do not. And that's because you don't just control the monsters, you also control the world. Environmental effects can allow you to attack your players without needing to take a monster's turn to do so, effectively increasing your action economy by allowing you to use the environment like you might use a creature. Or in the case of traps or similar effects that could be activated by players, you don't have to use your own actions at all. Instead, you turn the player's actions against them. They use their movement, it activates your trap. Even if they avoid the effect, you've tipped the action economy just a little bit towards your side. And while of course you can make these up on your own, like we've been doing here, this kind of thing is also built into the game for certain types of monsters. I'm talking, of course, about lair actions. Unfortunately, it's rare to be using monsters with lair actions until your players are at least in double-digit levels, but that shouldn't stop you from coming up with lair actions on your own for any monster that you think should have them. Check out this video next to learn how to do exactly that. Whether you want to make a boss battle feel climactic or you just need to beef up a monster to pose a challenge to your party, lair actions are a great way to boost your action economy in combat.